from an abused child to a homeless 130-pound addicted adult to now living a life beyond my wildest dreams. I hope that I've left somebody with a little bit of hope that no matter what darkness they might face, there's always light at the other end. You asked me where I got my EQ. I got it through child abuse. I had to learn from a survival mindset who I was going to deal with. Pressure can't hit a moving target. The only way to change an emotion is to get into action. Winners know the score. Champions know what put it there. Don't hesitate to ask people for help. I got to tell you, that changed my life.
The courage to act, the resilience to keep going, and the discipline when motivation fades. This is Great American Underdog with your host, Ron Marvo.
This episode is brought to you by Spark. Elevate performance, align with smarter solutions, prosper with lasting results, and many results marketing. You don't need another agency. You need a growth engine. Welcome back to Great American Underdog, where we share stories that give you the courage to act, the resilience to keep going, and the discipline when motivation fades. If these stories speak to you, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. It helps us get these conversations in front of more people who need the hope, the tools, and real life stories that can keep them going. Today's guest is David Long, a nationally recognized automotive executive, consultant, speaker, moderator, and author with more than 40 years of experience in dealership operations, leadership development, and performance coaching. David currently serves as president of David J. Long Consulting, vice president of Schumacher Automotive, and chief operating officer of VAN, the Vehicle Acquisition Network, where he's helped more than 100 buy centers be built across the country at dealerships, and is widely respected as one of the leading voices in private party vehicle acquisition, dealership performance, and leadership. But today is also much bigger than automotive. David's upcoming book, Step Zero, is about attitude, energy, approach, ownership, and building sustainable success from the inside out. So we're going to talk about leadership, accountability, culture, positivity, and why success starts before step one. David, it's an honor to welcome you to Great American Underdog. How are we feeling today?
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling great. It's so good to see you. This has been a long time coming. I'm glad to be on your show.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think the first interaction that we ever had, really where I was very inspired by what you were putting together, was on Clubhouse with the pandemic of positivity, which we'll get into. But again, like that kind of phrasing and that kind of mission immediately stood out to me. So it was just like you said, kind of a matter of time and a long time coming to have you on the show, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's my pleasure. David, before we talk about dealerships, buy centers, step zero, I always like to start with the human, the person that I'm speaking with. So what was, I guess, like the moment in your life or career, maybe where you realized that success was going to depend more on who you were becoming and the strategies you placed? What was, I guess, the turning point for David Long?
You know, I don't know that I ever really believed in the beginning that I had an opportunity to be successful. Success was not on my mind. Making ends meet, getting through the day. Like it was not, I didn't wake up one morning and say, I know I'm going to be very wealthy and I'm going to have the ability to do whatever I want, whenever I want. I just wanted to pay the rent. I just wanted to keep my job. So it was, took me many years to sort of evolve into a place of believing that I could do more than my family had ever done. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my answer.
Was there, I guess, maybe even a moment where you were able to get out of that survival mentality? Because I do understand that to some extent. My father being somebody who grew up without a dad in his own life, being the superintendent of his apartment building at 14 years old just to be able to pay rent. And it sounds like you had that kind of survival mindset background that eventually you morphed into leadership and helping people develop themselves as well. So was there a moment where the attitude, the energy, or the approach ended up changing for you, where you were like, okay, I can start doing things differently and I don't have to follow in those same steps?
Well, it was really fascinating because the accumulation of almost all of my leadership came from what I didn't want to do, who I didn't want to be, how I didn't want to lead. So That's where I really realized, oh my gosh, there's not a lot of people that have a high enough EQ, an emotional quotient, to take the time to really lead people from where they are, not from where we want them to be. Because I couldn't go from where I started to where I am if someone didn't slowly help me evolve. So my evolution was this. I found the people that I absolutely 100% didn't want to be, and I did the opposite.
So in a way, you had what our buddy Chris Saraceno would mention as anti-mentors, people that you didn't want to be like, and just said, okay, whatever they're doing and whatever results they're getting, that's not what I want. So you were able to see a lot of contrast in your life early on to kind of say, hey, um, I want to go in a completely different direction.
So just those three words you said in your opening: attitude, energy, and approach. Like it is not, well, I should say it is very difficult to find a leader, a lot of leaders that have really great attitudes. Yeah, my experience is a lot of leaders in their home, leaders at their church, leaders in their work. They're so consumed with reports and spreadsheets and deadlines and targets, and that they're not, for the most part, coming in with this warmth of energy, this really vibrant, we can win no matter what energy is seldom ever seen in a leadership because most leaders are overwhelmed with responsibility. So that's, the attitude and the energy all tie into that. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book.
So essentially speaking, every time, a leader goes to do things in their life, in their business, and again, leading in your personal life, there's a culture being set, and that's based on the actions that you take every day inside of that organization or inside of your personal life. So, and so many things that kind of drown us and keep us from leading the way we want to help other people achieve their goals, right? Like leadership should be, and I'd love to hear your take on this, leadership should be almost law of duplication, where you're having somebody take your place that makes you an effective leader because you've done such a great job, but they're so stuck behind a lot of, I don't want to call it noise, like Steve Jobs talks about signal and noise. I definitely don't want to call the tasks noise, but they do end up keeping us from the actual goals of leadership. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah. And I like what Steve Jobs says when he talks about the noise, but I do think that we become human beings. I mean, human doings versus human beings. And we just do all day long. We're doing, and we're forgetting to be the being part, which is where the magic lives.
How did you develop early on in your life and career? How did you develop that level of awareness and that EQ and be able to start making those changes? Because there was a time, of course, like you got into the automotive industry, you didn't just start in leadership, and there had to be some level of shift that happened for you that said, I have to change the way I'm maybe approaching things. Was there also a positive mentor that helped you as well?
I know you're leaning towards the pot, and I am obviously as the pandemic of positivity founder. um, but you asked me where I got my EQ. That's what I heard inside your question, right?
Yes, sir.
I got it through child abuse. As an abused youngest of 8 children, I had to learn from a survival mindset who I was going to deal with, how the key went in the cylinder in the door, how the door opened, the footsteps down the hallway. Like it was just all survival. So the EQ came from having and being trained how to pay attention to everything, what wasn't being said, what was being said, how somebody was breathing, how they were walking. Like the whole thing had everything to do with what developed my EQ. Now, I wish I could say that I got it from reading a book or um, being inspired by a mentor, but I got it from that.
Yeah, listen, and I appreciate that answer and think that that's bigger than just reading a book or having a mentor, because when you have real lived experience like that through trauma, negativity, etc., you have to learn how to adapt and evolve. So like you just said, you you developed that out of a source of survival which then of course bled into your career, and then also realizing like what you didn't want to be. So because that picture was painted so well of what you didn't want to be, I won't say that it made it easy because I doubt it was easy, but it definitely sounds like it made it easier for you to figure out what direction you wanted to go into as a human in terms of who you were becoming and who you were being on a day-to-day basis.
That's so well put. I mean, I never really even thought about it until having this conversation with you. And I look back at the patterns from early childhood, sports, being an athlete, being a performer in my job. It was always motivated by I don't want to not do what I don't want to succeed at the level that person's succeeding. And I see how little effort they're putting in. So I'm going to do twice the effort. They're going to learn these word tracks and phrases. I'm going to practice it every day, 3 hours a day until I can say them in my sleep. Right. I'm going to be a better athlete because I'm going to condition harder. Like it was just all, it was always driven by what I didn't want to become.
I kind of can get that in many ways through my own childhood. We could talk about that offline at another time because it's really about you, but it's also like um, realizing that you have to work harder than everybody else too, because to some extent you feel like you might be at a disadvantage at certain times. And Mike Tyson, I think, was the one that said it, or Tim Notsky, where it's when talent doesn't work hard, hard work beats talent. So you knew that if you worked hard, you could be better than the others that were maybe on the same field or environment that you were in. And then how did that, I guess, bleed into you starting in automotive? Like what was that where you started your professional career in your life?
It is. Yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't, I didn't start in automotive because, that was my best option. I started in automotive because at the time I thought it was my only
Hmm.
option. And there's a whole story around that as well. But yeah, that's primarily why I went automotive.
Yeah.
I
What,
didn't have a lot
what,
of other options.
for sure, you got to do what's viable. What role do you feel like, I guess, shaped you the most early on?
In automotive,
Yeah.
the role that probably shaped me the most was starting in detail.
Mhm.
And the reason it shaped me the most, I'll never forget how hard and hot it was to be a detailer in Florida in August, and walk out, drive a car up that I just got done really working hard to perfect, and handing the keys to somebody that didn't give me eye contact or say thank you for your effort, or like that really
Right.
shaped me. It impacted me. I'm thinking you're sitting up here, you're drinking a cold drink, you're making 10 times what I'm making. I could have maybe had some eye contact and a thank you. That would have gone a long. So those are again the things that shaped me was the way that I found people to interact with others.
It's funny because in my world, I was a server and a waiter, and I worked in like 24-hour diners. I worked at chain restaurants. And I always say the way that you treat the people that could not make a difference potentially in your life, or the people that are really serving you to take care of you, the way I watch people take care of those people tells me a lot about those individuals and how you treat them. So again, like I get that from the detailing job, like just seeing how people treat other people, that, you're detailing their car, they don't think twice about you versus the person who shows up and is like, thank you so much, maybe gives you a tip, maybe doesn't, but actually just even acknowledges you for the job you did, can change somebody's life. And I feel like that's even on the leadership side. And so much from automotive, like the Saturday morning meetings where there a lot of times they're beat up sessions versus what can we do to say what everybody did positively and recognize people for their accomplishments and the little things, because those things do go a long way, and it does develop people and it does stick to people more than I think a lot of people realize.
And Ron, I'll tell you that when I'm going to hire a high level leader, I take them to lunch in a place that has, not a sandwich that you order at the deli and you sit down and eat, but somewhere where they're going to be served and they're going to, and I'm only looking to see how they treat the staff. When they walked in, did they greet the maitre d'? When they sat down, did they thank the person that filled their water? when the meal got set in front of them, did they thank the person that left it? Like, if that's not happening, they're not hired ever.
If you think that you're above other people, you'll never be an effective leader. And you're really, I almost want to say leadership and coaching go hand in hand too, because it's like, um, if you're trying to get a team to perform on the athletic side, or for example, when I did a lot of boxing coaching, if you want to get somebody to perform at a high level, you have to be able to pour into them and pay attention to the small things that most may overlook. And I feel like when you're looking for a leader in your organization, those small things and how you treat people really matter more than anything.
More than the big things, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Um, what did your, I guess, early days of automotive, what did that teach you about, I guess, pressure and performance as well as people? Because that's the other piece of it too. You mentioned all the things that leaders also have to pay attention to outside of developing their people. How do they balance really all of that, or rather effectively do it, right? Because sometimes balance can be the wrong word.
In other words, how do you find
The
work life?
combination, yeah.
In what position? In any position?
Really in a leadership role, like, you've developed that over the years being in automotive, being obviously to a high level of success of developing leaders, but also handling the pressure that comes with having to perform in an environment like automotive.
It's really strange because I don't know that there haven't been many times in my career that I felt pressure.
Mhm.
Pressure can't hit a moving target. And if I have a clearly defined plan and I'm executing on that plan to the best of my ability, I'm not feeling a lot of pressure.
Right.
It's when I'm hiding behind a computer, digging into reports to prevent myself from having to talk to anybody. That's when the pressure starts to mount. But activity, the only way to change an emotion is to get into action. And I'm always so full of action that it's hard to feel pressure. Why? Because I'm doing the next right thing. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds probably egotistical, but this is my day. Like I have my day all laid out. I have my week laid out. I have my month laid out. I don't know that I really have time to feel any kind of pressure.
That's fair because you have a plan of action. When you have, like Napoleon Hill talks about in Think and Grow Rich, a definiteness of purpose and organized planning around that, it's very challenging to not feel in alignment with what you're creating in your life. I feel that though, and maybe you can elaborate on this, you see a lot of the younger upcoming leaders seem to have that quote unquote pressure in their life, or being something that keeps them stuck. Would the would the the goal be to have them learn how to plan better in order to overcome that?
I think it would be. I think that would help quite a bit. But I also think that the search for balance is where pressure lives. Just think about it. Like, I feel pressure because I should be at work. I feel pressure because I'm at work and I want to be home. Like when it's all integrated and I'm in flow state and I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing it and I'm focused and I'm there, I'm where my feet are. Like, how much pressure is in the now? So I don't have it completely figured out, but all I know is when I'm worrying about what tomorrow looks like or, regretful of the past, I am really not a good leader.
Yeah, because you can't be present when you're doing those two things. But what you just said, I don't want to glaze over. It's so powerful because I feel like so many people, especially in a distracted world that we live in, people that want what they, let's just say, using the example of social media, they see certain types of quote unquote what success looks like on social media. They enter this rat race to be able to get a title or whatever it is in their life. And then they don't end up achieving anything because, like you said, they're not in alignment with that plan of action or that purpose. And I feel like they're kind of missing how to create that in their life. So, I think that's a perfect segue for me to go right into the book with step zero. Like you called the book step zero. Most people want step one, but what is step zero really? And why does that come first?
So here's where it was birthed. It was birthed at seeing teams that execute well on a process and are committed to doing. Um, what they were hired to do, but not succeeding. I thought to myself almost 2 decades ago, it has to be more than just the process and the people. It has to be prior to the process. And what are some of the contributing factors that make somebody successful at what they do? One, obviously, you have to have a great attitude. Where does a great attitude come from? And it talks about that in the book. And then energy. How do you manage your energy to impact people positively? Right. So that was two. And then the approach. I think a lot of people approach with a wait and see attitude. What are your expectations of the outcome based on what you're about to do? And I don't think people enter in situations with a clearly defined plan of why we're doing what we're doing and for the sake of what. Right. So that's where step zero was birthed. It was to help me first understand what's more important than a process. Well, having the right attitude, because I could do the process perfectly with a bad attitude and not get a good result.
Sure.
We agree, right?
Yes.
I could do the process perfectly. I could have the best step one through step whatever. But if my energy is off, the outcome won't be there. And then if I'm inconsistent with my approach, I only do it when I have what I call mood dependent excellence, right? My approach, I
Huh.
approach it really strong when my mood is right. Well, then I'm not going to have the outcome. So that's some of what's the book's about.
I love that, because the other two underlying things that you said in there that I want to highlight is the purpose and the why. Because I think the attitude, the energy, and the approach, and and really the consistency comes when you have a well-defined purpose and you understand why you're doing what you're doing. And on a deeper note, someone like yourself who literally uh, got a lot of the results in their life because of what not to do. If you see somebody that wants a certain type of desired end result, whether that's because they want to move towards a greater thing in their life, or whether, like you, they want to move away from pain, which is loss aversion, which, as you know, you'll do more to move away from loss than you'll do to move towards an equal or greater gain. Most people will. So I think that that purpose and that why and who you're serving and helping others get that end result, I'm sure that when you find those type of leaders, the attitude, the energy, and the approach become a lot easier. Would you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And I'll double tap on something you just said because it reminds me of, Danny Zaslowski, Da Vinci.
Absolutely.
So one
Great
of
human.
my very dear friends, great human being, he talks about fear pushes and vision pulls. I think I
Mm-hmm.
said it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I just heard you say, which is paraphrasing what I hear Danny say, which is so true. Vision pulls, and I want to be pulled. I don't want to be pushed. I don't know about you, but I'd rather
Same.
be pulled towards something positive than pushed away from something negative. So I think that's brilliant what you just said, Ron. Great stuff.
It's also at the core of your coaching of step zero and behind what you want people, it sounds like, to get out of the book. And when it comes to, like, let's just say attitude, how does someone know when their attitude is really costing them results? Is it something that you feel like it has to be addressed by an outside force? Or do you think that it's something that they can practice picking up on so that way they can make an adjustment?
Like Chris Saraceno's book, Theory of Five. I do believe having feedback and a circle of influence that helps you identify when you start to stray off the path. I
Yeah.
think that's super important. It's one of the things that I get out of being in recovery, right? Having other men on the same journey with the same, um, what I would call, you can call them principles if you want, or purpose. I believe that if we have people around us that give us feedback, because sometimes we're the last person to know that we're off track.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Even in athletics business, you think, if things are status quo and quiet for too long, then there's probably something going on that you're not aware of.
Yeah, that's a
If the
good
needle's
point.
not moving and you're not able to measure a change, at least, too.
No doubt. That's a great point. Let me ask you a question. Do you think, based on, because you sound like you've read almost every book I've ever read, do you think the majority of people that are operating, whether no matter where they are in their journey, do you think they operate out of fear or love?
I think a lot of them operate out of fear. And I think it's because of fear of the unknown, fear of being judged, fear of feeling like an imposter. And I think until they get inspired, aspired, or invigorated by someone, something, an event in their lives, a canon moment, I think a lot of times that they're listening to the external rather than following their own inner guidance system, which is what leads to a certain level of fear. I think both, like, this reminds me of, like, if you've ever seen the movie Bronx Tale. Sonny, the lead guy in there, talks about, is it better to be loved or respect or feared, right? And I think a little bit of both sometimes can be healthy as long as you don't let fear consume you, if that answers the question.
It's a great
Because,
answer.
yeah,
Yeah, and I agree. I do think majority of people operate from fear. And
yeah,
if you're not consumed, so fear has been my best asset my whole life. I've always felt like I wasn't enough. Always felt like I didn't belong. So what did that make me do?
push you.
Yeah, made me work harder. Made me show up earlier. Made me run through the tape, not let up. So I think fear is a wonderful asset and not a liability if used the right way.
It depends, I guess, on your mentality at whatever you're looking to accomplish, right? Like, for example, for me, the last 2 years, I ran 1,000 miles per year. My goal is always has been to live up to my full potential at everything that I do. So I set that goal and said to myself, yeah, it looks challenging and everything like that. But then when I broke it down and I measured it and I broke it down to 83.3 miles per month, just using that as an example, and then I started getting the results because I just started doing, like you said, I didn't think, I had a plan, and then I took the action. And I think that a lot of times, and I'd love for you to elaborate on this from a business side and even just in a life side, how do you help people, I guess, overcome that fear, or, to your point, use it as a asset so that way they can set that plan, take that action, and not feel the pressure, right? Because then they're very much in alignment with what they're looking to achieve.
I think self-honesty, right, is where I would go, identifying what the fear, where it's coming from, and how to use it in a way that's constructive versus destructive. So, learned helplessness, fear can lead to learned helplessness. Like, why bother? I'm not going to amount to something, anything anyway. That's the one side. The other side is, I do have to work harder. I was a slow learner. I was in the slow learner class and I was fearful to read a book. I was fearful to, have to solve a problem on the board. So that fear made me, do my homework more. It made me do all the things. So, um, God, I think it's an individual journey, but I think when the fear prevents us from acting is when we really have to look at it as a liability. It's when we keep acting in spite of the fears when it's an asset.
That's the courage piece of it, right? And it's just like in leadership and in business, if you've never had a certain type of leadership role, or it's your first time leading people in your life, and you you haven't done that, right? So there's obviously fear there, but then stepping into the role and being courageous and putting your best foot forward and listening to the people that came before you and taking the lessons out of that, um, can be a very good starting point. And, like, for example, with step zero, is it I think it's something that you continue to reset every day. Is that true? Or is it's not something you're going to practice once? Um, Really, it's going to be something that you're going to continuously work on and pay attention to, and and develop that self-awareness.
The way you frame that up, I don't even remember if I put it in the book, but there's a 240 reset process that I have. that I use in my leadership training. And the 240 reset, like if you're getting ready to do a one-on-one with someone, the 240, how many minutes of seconds is in 240 seconds? It's 4, right? So, so 4 minutes, take 4 minutes and do a complete reset. Am I going to show up and know what the intended outcome is? Am I showing up expecting a positive outcome? Or am I playing in my head? I'm going to say, then they're going to say, then they're going to react, and then I'm going to react. Like, how people play out the whole movie? Never even happened yet.
Yeah, stop sending their tracks.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that has to do with the approach part in my book. And that's how are you setting yourself when you walk in your back door, when you come home? Like, are you going to make that the best 240 seconds of your family's day? Or are you going to come in and help them realize why you hate your job so much? So that whole thing about, you said reset. Do you need to do it every day? No, I need to maybe do it 8 times a day. I might need to do it 18 times in a day versus every day. Do you know?
Yeah, that makes total sense because again, I think that it also at the crux of what we're talking about, it's the self-awareness piece. And if you're catching yourself having that, like you said, learned helplessness, I also call that victim mindset, right? Like if you just have that victim mindset, and nothing's ever working out for me, and that's just the way it is, and other people have success and I don't, and that's just been my life, right? And you just accept that versus like, hold on a second. Why do I believe what I believe? Why am I feeling like this? Giving myself a second of how do I want to, or 4 minutes rather, not a second, to say, how do I want to come off to the people I'm about to interact? How do I want them to feel? Not really. I think people get very stuck in themselves on the internal too at times of how are people going to perceive me versus let me walk in a room and how am I going to make other people feel? What's the goal for the people that I'm looking to interact with right now?
I love that. My coach, David Meltzer, have you heard of him?
Very familiar with David.
So he wrote the foreword to my book, which I felt very fortunate. And he talks about being a blessing versus being blessed, right? And you just said that. So do we work harder to have blessings happen for us or to be a blessing to someone? And I found that the more I work on being a blessing for someone, the more blessings I have.
Amen to that, man. That's so freaking true. I love the way he put that. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. Um, you've, again, you've coached a lot of people yourself, and it's so cool to hear. And I think people need to hear this as well. Everybody needs a coach in their life for, I believe, at different stages. And I think it's very important to look for that help and be willing to be open to that type of help, right? You've coached a lot of people. What, in your opinion, separates the people who get the leaders that get the short-term results from the leaders or the people that actually build something sustainable? And it might be something that we've already covered, but I'm just curious.
It's a simple acronym called HOW. And what the H stands for, honesty. I find somebody that doesn't have the ability to have self-efficacy, right? They're unable to be honest with themselves. I know those people have and this ties into recovery as well. Those people have a very difficult time um, succeeding at a real high level, or they leave things on the table. And then the O is the open-minded. Like, am I open to new information? Am I open to learning and unlearning and relearning, like my friend Brian Benstock says? And then the W, have to tell you, the willingness piece is probably just as important as the honesty and the open-mindedness. Like, if I get direction, am I willing to actually take it and execute on it? Like, can you imagine meeting with a therapist or a coach or every single week and lying to them? Like, what would be the benefit of that? But people do it all the time. You hire a $200 an hour therapist and you sit down and tell them how great everything is, how wonderful you feel. And you drive home like the world's coming to an end. So I think the how is all it really takes, but it's very elusive. I mean, being self efficacious, being open minded, and having a willingness to approach things differently, I think makes all the difference.
Well, I think it also equates to, like you had said, Ben Stock talks about the relearning piece, but also being able to, let's just say, open a book. And somebody might be open minded to read the book, even if they didn't want to before. But then do you have the willingness to act upon the information that's inside the book, right? Like somebody could read step zero, but then do you follow the prompts? Do you follow the action steps and see the results that you get, and then be able to be open-minded and honest enough with yourself when the results are different than what you might have thought, and be able to then make the adjustments. I think that that is definitely, I love the how piece, and I think that's super valuable.
Good.
Yeah. What when you are, I guess, leading people, David, and you're holding people accountable, right? How do you do that in a way that guides them and inspires them versus crushing them? Because a lot of times you see quote unquote leaders, which really it probably aren't leaders to begin with. They're more like task managers. They give, something for somebody to do inside the business. And it's just comes across in a way where the person receiving the information kind of just feels crushed, like they did a bad job or incapable. How's the best way to hold people accountable without doing that?
I think the person feels crushed because the expectation wasn't aligned. So it's way before it's back to step zero. So if we have agreement, like we're going to enter into an agreement, you're going to work with me, and I just happen to have the leadership position, and your role is to report to me. What I am going to definitely know is that you know what a good job looks like, what's expected, what you can count on me for, and what I'm going to demand from you. And you're going to either agree, disagree, modify, either way, it doesn't matter. If you disagree, then you probably were not meant to be together. Like, I like part of this job and part of that. And this is the job that you're being offered. Are you interested in this job? And it's not a buffet. This job means this job, not part of this job, not some of this job, not sometimes, not when you feel like it. This job is this job. Do you want this job? Yes. Okay. That's step one. Step two is this is what a good job looks like when you do this job. So if this doesn't happen, it's a result of needing to get either more consistent or better at this. Do you agree how the cause and effect is going to work in this relationship?
Mm-hmm.
We're on the same page? Okay.
Of course.
So I'm going to ask for your permission. Do I have your permission to hold you accountable to this and this outcome?
Right.
Are you comfortable with me being kind but candid whenever I see you moving in the opposite direction?
For me, the answer would be yes, it's expected, and I want you to do that.
So we're going to have a real clear understanding of this is the job, this is the outcome, and this is how I'm going to lead you. And
Mm,
I may not be for everyone, but in my coaching and performance business, I have 35 dealers, and we enter into the agreement before I sign them up. And in that agreement, here's my style of coaching. Here's my level of candor. Here's the most kind I can be. Is this a style that you're interested in? Because if
right.
you're looking for somebody to tell you how great you are and how you're making great progress, but you're not doing what you agree to do, I wouldn't be your performance coach. I will feel abusive to you. Why?
Because it's not going to be in alignment with how you want to be spoken to, and you're not going to be comfortable, and you're not going to take the action that's necessary to get your results.
Yeah, you agreed to this. I'm doing this, but you really had a counterfeit request,
Mm-hmm.
right? A counterfeit yes to my request will leave both of us feeling uncomfortable. I'll feel uncomfortable coaching you the way I agreed I was going to coach you. And you're going to feel uncomfortable with the way I'm coaching you because you really didn't mean yes. Whose fault is that? It is not mine. So So that's why I have these engagement agreements with everybody I work with. I will not be for everyone. This is exactly the way you'll be coached. And these are the things you'll be coached to perform on. Is this what you're ready for? Because if you say yes and mean no, it will be very uncomfortable for you. And when you have that level of transparency, right, there is no tension. There's either you did it or you got coached up in a way that might hurt your feelings. If it hurt your feelings, you should be mad at yourself, not at me.
Yeah. And also, it does protect you and your energy and pouring that into somebody who's just not ready for it as well. There is that
Yeah.
element of it, and I understand that from a being a coach myself in ways. And the worst thing in the world is a counterfeit yes. Like there's nothing worse than
Oh,
that, whether it's a car deal, a coaching gig, or anything like that. Like don't tell me yes that you want something and then you really don't, but you just didn't want to have the harder conversation. Have the harder conversation, and we can see if it works from there. The setting the expectation piece, and really what that's doing by saying that out loud, which I know that you would agree with this. There's nothing more important than trust. Like the trust level by saying that thing that you said, by saying that out loud, now you know, like, this is exactly what you're getting. And it actually, instead of repelling people, it repels the wrong people and attracts the right people because they know that you can trust them and vice
I
versa.
love it. And it's better for them and it's better for me, right? Like Liza Borges says, you know Liza?
Yes.
So Liza, Brian Benstock, Danny, and I are on Rocket, and we have these lesson plans built out. One of the things that I love that Liza says about leadership is that you may just not be a leader that can lead here. Doesn't mean you can't be a great leader. It just means that you can lead, just not here. So as long as the parameters are set and there's agreement, and then you're open to the kind candor, the disconnect generally is, I'll say this, Ron, then we can move on,
Sure.
is that people aren't willing for the most part to have the difficult conversation. The agreement isn't met, we ignore it. The agreement isn't met, we minimize it. The agreement isn't met and we marginalize it. And then pretty soon we get frustrated and now we look like a jerk because now we're upset rather than having the conversation. Because it's never about, have I ever told you about my broken shoelace analogy?
No, please. I'd love to hear it.
Well, it's never about the emotion around the shoelace. It's all the other emotions that weren't dealt with prior to the shoelace breaking. So when somebody flips out over a broken shoelace, it's because they have unresolved issues. It's not because their shoelace broke. So when I get upset with somebody, generally it's because all the things that they agreed to do and weren't doing, I didn't do the right thing by having the conversation. And now the object of what's happening now is my anger, not their lack of follow through.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like
So,
you cry over spilled milk because not because the milk spilled, but because something else happened in your life before that, and you have emotions around it. With the
mhm.
last thing on the leadership piece, and we'll move on. But the managing people versus developing people, I just want your take on that. Like, how does somebody from a leader, how do you help know the difference between managing people and developing people as a leader? Like, what are the actions between what's the difference between the two really that you see the most impactful leaders do?
Well, I love that. Some people can only be managed and not led, just
Hmm.
so you know, in my opinion. And maybe that's because I didn't find the combination. But oftentimes people try to drag dead bodies up to the top of the hill to see the view. You can't lead somebody that doesn't want to be led, that isn't excited to charge the hill with you. So
Right.
from that perspective, in order to lead somebody, you have to be you have to be able to have wanted to and can be led. Have you ever seen anybody that can't be led being somebody that can do a good job leading? I haven't.
No.
The best leaders are somebody that can be led. So from that perspective, I think that's super important. How do you take direction?
Right.
How do you assimilate feedback? And the better I can get on that, I don't talk about you, but the better I can get on being led, the better I can lead. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I see it.
I It doesn't just answer my question. I'm in full alignment with your response.
Cool.
So that makes total sense.
Awesome.
Now you also have the vehicle acquisition network, and you've helped dealers going onto the automotive side set up over 100 buy centers. What is, I guess, the world taught you about controlling what you can't control and instead of reacting to the market? Because I'm sure that you see on the automotive side a lot of reactive dealers, and kind of like if you use the broken shoelace analogy, shoelace breaks, they react, and it's a lot of the things that probably happened before. How did the buy center thing come about? And then how do you help those dealers essentially set them up?
I'm really glad you asked that question. Thank you for that. So 13 and a half, 14 years ago, I met Tom Gregg, which is the owner of Vehicle Acquisition Network here in Silicon Valley, right down the street from where I live. And I had a problem. I needed somebody to help me solve it. Because I had opened a buy center. I had met two guys from from MIT with MBAs that helped me do every piece of my process, every word track, every phrase, every follow-up sequence, everything. We A/B tested everything. That buy center, the first one 14 years ago, started buying 250 cars a month, which was sensational. Next thing you know, I'm being flown and to speak for the European Dealer Association. I'm in Brazil opening up buy centers. I'm like, wow, what do dealers need more than anything? I mean, they need inventory,
Yeah, they need cars.
used inventory. It's one of the hardest things.
Absolutely.
So I thought, well, if I could scale this and I love the impact and I love the coach, let me go and help another dealer and see if I can multiply this. And then let me help another one. That was 107 dealers ago. Wow. And it's a LMS, learning management system. It's all the videos. Remember back in the day, Grant Cardone and all these people
Yeah.
made training videos?
Go Verdi.
Joe Verdi. Well, it's that for the buy center. It's word tracks, it's manuals, it's scripts, it's follow-up process. It's everything that's been built out over 14 years that lives inside of my LMS and that comes along with 50 minutes of personal coaching from me every single week. So that's how I've built that business. So about at the end of last year, when I was going to retire, like completely retire, we're moving to Idaho. I'm 60 now, and I'm like, I'm going to spend the rest of my time. And Tom Gregg called and said, "Hey, why don't you come join Van? You've been using them for 14 years, and you've half of the buy centers you've opened use Van. Nobody knows it better than you. Nobody understands how to open up buy centers remotely better than anybody that I know. This is Tom talking. So why don't you come and be my COO?" I've never been the COO of a tech company. So since February, we get this. This is exciting. We now have 45 managed buyers that live in different countries that reach out for dealers, set appointments, and those customers are on customer selling private party vehicles, and they bring them in, purchase. Now, it took me 14 years to grow my David J. Long consulting for used cars, for general managers, parts service advisors, and buy centers. Well, I thought, I think I could really help Tom. And now we're growing our managed buyer department. We have of course, the Van platform that's been in dealerships for 14 years, most of which I have helped with. And I'm just, it's a great product, and it's solving for one of the dealer's most difficult problems, used car inventory.
It really is. And of course, we can get into the whole disruptors of the world and the Carvanas and the CarMaxes and people wanting to sell their cars and making it simple, easy for them to do that, and having dealers have that opportunity to capture that first party vehicle acquisition that they may not have before by what you guys do at Van, having process, having consistency, having follow up, and taking ownership of the process. And like you said before, dealers with the best inventory ultimately win, right? If you don't have the inventory, you can't win. I think that there's also like leadership lessons inside of that, which is like, do you see the best operators? How do they, I guess, measure versus the average ones? Do you see measurement being one of the tools that really makes them more effective over and above anything else?
I don't believe you can win without keeping score.
Right.
So measurement without question, but the real true high performing leaders know what put the score there. So
Mm.
think about so
Attribution.
well, conversion and attribution, yes. So winners know the score, champions know what put it there, right? Which means what is your outreach to contact, your contact to offer, your offer to appointment, your appointment to show, and your show to transact relative to your standard, right? Because we don't get what we want, we get what we tolerate. So, what is it relative to the standard? And my best buy centers, I've got guys, not on the van side, but on my coaching side, that are buying 50 private party cars a piece. Now, I don't know that that impresses you, but it impresses me without
Yeah,
spending any advertising dollars, without
it's
going to
insane.
an auction, without paying for transportation. $150,000 a month in additional company revenue.
Yep.
Come on. That's the
Yeah.
best bit. It's the best investment out there.
Well, any dealers that are listening definitely have to contact you on that and the vehicle acquisition network team because that's a real. I won't say it's not easy per se. You got to follow the script and you got to follow what they learn from you, but it is a way to drive additional revenue that you wouldn't have had before without spending the money on the marketing and advertising. I absolutely love that.
There is a little, sometimes there's some confusion. Somebody will call and say, I want to hire you to coach my team because
Hmm.
you will have the van product. I just have to say, the van product, as the COO of van, that is one thing.
Right.
The opening up a buy center and buying 50 cars a piece, that is something completely different. So,
Sure. Well, that's the implementation part, and that's where the effective leadership, the process, the consistency comes into place because it's you may be familiar with Robert Gower from Traver Connect, but
I, yeah.
he shared with me one time the book No Can Do by Ken Blanchard, and it's the gap between knowing and doing, and it usually comes down to three things: it's thinking, lack of follow through, or information overload, or a combination of. So they can get the information from Van, but then how are they still having that gap between knowing and doing? And is any of those things impeding them from getting those 50 vehicles a month, if you will?
Wow. That was well said. Jesus, I guarantee you I got more out of this time with you than you could have possibly gotten from me.
I don't
That
know
was
about that,
great.
man. I
That was
appreciate you,
great.
but I really appreciate that. I'm just here to serve the people, my friend, and bring incredible stories like yours to them. And the insights that you've already shared in this time. I got a couple other things I just want to talk about before we jump, but like
Sure.
all things used cars, pandemic of positivity. I feel like that group has become so much more than just used cars. Like what do you think it is about that group that people are really coming for that's beyond also the tactics, David?
I think they know that when they go there, they're not going to be. There's 1,200 people that join every Friday morning.
Yeah,
That's a lot of people, right? To
it is.
come to log on. I had Patrick Abad say at a soda con, he said, David, did you know the dealers are changing their Friday morning sales meeting so they can join all things used cars plus? I said, no. He said, well, what were you thinking? You're having a 9 o'clock Friday morning. I'm like, listen, Patrick, it's 6 o'clock in the morning in Northern California. I did this because I wanted to learn from people, not
Uh-huh.
because I wanted to teach anyone.
Yeah.
Right? So 9 o'clock, schmine o'clock. I'm not thinking about your time. I'm thinking about my time. I needed to get it in before I went to work.
Right.
But 1,200 people, 263 episodes later, and you can go get this. You can get atuc.ai and ask a question, and anybody that's been on that show, Brian Benstock, the list goes. I mean, you can just go down an amazing list of human beings. You could just say, to atuc.ai, what would so and so say about? Boom, there's your answer from atuc.ai. So I've enjoyed doing ATUC AI. I've enjoyed doing all things used cars plus because it's a learning platform and it's
Right.
free.
And I love that you've compiled all those conversations into that atuc.ai. I'm going to be sure to link that in the description below for anybody that listens to this who would like to enjoy that. But also, they got to get on Clubhouse and actually get into what those conversations, because it's used cars, it's the automotive industry, but it's also so much more than that. I've listened to a lot and been in those rooms, and very appreciative for my time when I've been in there. And you're also, David, the creator of the Pandemic of Positivity, which I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, started right around COVID when people were really jumping onto Clubhouse. Like, obviously, I think at this point I know, but what drove the Pandemic of Positivity? Was it from COVID? Like, where did it really come from? And is that something that you really focus on still right now?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of merchandise around it. We do heavily focus on the pandemic positivity, but I'm in my house right now, and about 30 yards from here in my backyard, I was sitting there, and I had to just fire. We have 500 employees, and I had to release every one of them,
Wow.
and my heart was broken. Fathers, mothers, right, significant others. And we just were like, we don't know if we're going to reopen. We don't know if we do, if you're going to have a job. So we had to just release everybody. And I'm sitting back there and then I'm watching the news and I see semi trucks with bodies and I'm like, oh my God. And I thought there's got to be a way not that we can make any of that positive because we can't, but what is going on in the world that might be positive? And there's three core principles in the pandemic of positivity: kindness, compassion, and love. Those are three things I think individually we can control without any outside influence. Can we be kind to people? Absolutely. Do we need to agree with them? No. Can we still be kind with them? For sure. Can we be compassionate and understand that everybody is fighting their own fight? Right? People that are fighting fights that we couldn't even imagine. And then how can we be more loving? And love is a funny word for some people, but how can we show people, even that we don't agree with, that we're not in alignment with, from philosophically, religiously, how can we align with love? And that's what the foundational principles in the pandemic of positivity are. And it was birthed during COVID, just try to give a little more kindness, compassion, and love to people that needed it so badly. And it stuck around, as you can see.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm so grateful that it stuck around because, again, like, that's part of the reason I have this show, is to your point before, you never know what somebody else is going through. I also equate that to boxing very much because you never know what somebody else knows or why they're fighting. Like, why is, if my dad would say, if their dog in the fight is bigger than yours, like, you're going to have a problem and your hands full. And to kind of know that people are fighting bigger battles, and that even something like the pandemic of positivity, which sometimes you don't realize the impact that you're having on other people, and to see it grow the way it has, and what you've done with that is really awesome. And I love the kindness, compassion, love, peace, because I think the world just needs a lot more of that, man. So thank you for that.
Me too. I agree. And thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Going also to the family side here, David, like, you built a powerful career, but you're also a husband, a father, and a grandfather. How has your definition of success, I guess, changed over time as well?
Well, this isn't meant to make anybody feel bad, but I know the car business has robbed a lot of people of family time, sporting events, important engagements. I can tell you that I chose family over finance 100% of the time in my career. So, and I've had a really good career. But back to communication, anytime I entered into a relationship with an employer, I always set the foundation on sporting events, ballet, whatever, horse competition, whatever it is, I'm going. Like, if that's not something that aligns with how your company runs, I would just not be the right person for you. So it has always been my number one focus. I have three amazing, very different children. One is going to be a plant doctor and is a concert pianist. The middle one's going to be a nurse and is an equestrian. The youngest one has 3 jobs, a lot like his dad, and and has been an athlete, and he's been traveling with me since he's 8 years old. Been married for 31 years, and we have 2 grandkids. So here's how it's changed. We're building a home in Idaho that is more of a compound for everybody to live at so that we can be together every day if we want, or months or weeks at a time. And I am so excited. It'll be done in September. And that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's awesome to hear. You deserve all those blessings, man. It's really cool to connect with you on this platform and share what we've shared and all the wonderful insights that people will get from listening to this. As we wrap up here, when it's all said and done, David, what do you hope people say about the way you showed up?
Well, I hope that they found some sincerity and hope in my message, from an abused child to a homeless, 130-pound addicted adult to now living a life beyond my wildest dreams. I hope that I've left somebody with a little bit of hope that no matter what darkness they might face, there's always light at the other end, and it's always darkest before the dawn. So if you're in that spot, hang in there, reach out to somebody, get some help, ask for some guidance, or go to David J. Long Consulting. Check out my website. Doesn't cost you anything. Send me a message, and I'm happy to help if I can. That's what I'm hoping.
I love that. I was just about to ask you, where can people go? davidjlongconsulting.com. Is there anywhere else that people should go to learn more about you, Step Zero, and really when the book releases as well?
So much to my wife's chagrin, I'm everywhere. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I think I might even still have a profile on MySpace.
Cool.
I'm kidding about MySpace.
Yeah, I figured.
But I like to post as much inspirational, motivation, and hopeful content as I can. And there's usually some stuff in there that makes my family embarrassed. But that's where you can find me is anywhere that there's a social media presence. I'm there.
Cool. I think the embarrassing things are probably what makes it fun a lot of times as well. Well, David, right, for me, it does too. I get it. David, you've been so gracious with your time, man. I want to thank you. Is there any last things that you want, any takeaways or anything that you want the audience to hear before we sign off for the day?
I think the only takeaway is don't hesitate to ask people for help. I got to tell you, that changed my life. When I started asking people for help and hitching my wagon to a lot of the people that I mentioned here today, I've never had anybody say, I'm not willing to help you. I don't have time to give to you. The people that are most successful are the people that are going to say yes. And those are the people I want to hitch my wagon to anyway. So reach out to somebody that you resonate with and just say, hey, I don't need a lot of time, but would you be willing to give me 15, 20 minutes a week or a month? And just ask somebody to pour into you. And I would be shocked if they said no. That's my message.
I would be too. You just got to have the courage to go and ask. I think that's huge. So, David, once again, I want to thank you for being on Great American Underdog. This has been another incredible episode where you can develop the courage to act, the resilience to keep going, and the discipline when motivation fades. If you got value out of this conversation, please be sure to subscribe and share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.